Hi, this is Ren,
This is Casey.
and this is All Walks of Film.
Welcome to an installation of Double Feature. We're trying to sort of even out the positives and the negatives by talking about two movies we saw this week. One I think we both really liked, and one I think we both really didn't like. So, just to try to balance it out, we're going to talk about the movies we saw together.
Yeah, so the first movie on our list is Ingrid Goes West.
Go West!
And we're going to follow that up with Wind River.
Yeah. For Ingrid Goes West, that was a great one to see in theaters because the reactions were awesome. There was one guy where at the end of the movie when the credits rolled, he was just like, no shit! No shit!
Yeah, that guy was great.
Yeah, everybody loved it. But what made it even better is before the movie's a neon production, so before the movie they showed neon shorts, which their logo for that's really cute. And their neon short was Hi Stranger, the online viral phenomenon. And you can watch Ren's reaction to Hi Stranger. Check out the link below. But I've been kind of fascinated with that piece, and it was really something to watch it in theaters. I'd seen it, I think maybe 3 or 4 times already, so I wasn't watching it that much. I was just kind of like listening, and people were great. They were laughing, and then they were kind of uncomfortably laughing, and they were just sort of like really fidgety, and they kind of didn't know what to think, and they were all just like whispering about it, because like it was really interesting to see that. And that's kind of what the whole movie was like, but that was just really fun.
Yeah, and it was essentially a perfect primer for the movie that we were about to see.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was really great. And then the movie itself, it stars Aubrey Plaza, Elizabeth Olsen, and the reason why the landlord Dan Pinto, Batman, looks really familiar is because that's Ice Cube's son. That's why he looks really familiar.
It's really funny because, like, in the promotional period, in the promotional images and everything like that, it just looks like Ice Cube.
Yeah, because it's a really well done hand-drawn poster, kind of like 80s nostalgia sort of style.
God, I miss those.
Yeah, back when we had like really incredible posters. But since it was a drawing and not a photograph, it really did look a lot like Ice Cube. Everyone in the movie does a really phenomenal job. The production design's all on point. The cinematography is great. But really, what I liked about the movie was just everything that the movie was about. Because essentially the movie is, not to get into spoilers, but the movie is essentially about millennials. What is it to be a millennial? What is it to be in this new age of technology? What is it to have an identity? You know, what is the millennial identity? You know, how do we work with social media? And we've been seeing so many movies try really hard to do this because they kind of have to try hard to do this, but nobody has anything really to say about it or any insight, so it just ends up being really phony. And in this whole movie about the phony nature of social media, it ends up feeling the most genuine of a lot of things I've seen.
Yeah, I remember the first time I ever saw social media kind of presented in a way of like people kind of linked to their phones was a movie called Detention, which was like kind of a horror movie, kind of a comedy, kind of a I don't know what the hell that movie was sort of thing. And it was a very spastic movie. A lot of the jokes and imagery was going at a mile a minute, and it was definitely an interesting experiment with, you know, like, oh, I'm chatting on Twitter and, you know, doing all this. I'm not chatting on Twitter, but yeah, God, I sound old when I say this, but you know what I mean, like, you know, yeah, wow. But I wanted to say that after that. I've seen it used in interesting ways, like House of Cards, you know, shows the texting on the screen. There's a lot of social media stuff done in that.
And it's always really interesting to me to see how movies are evolving to incorporate texting. Because we've gotten to, well, for a while film was trying to do like this timeless thing where like cell phones aren't really a plot point. Texting isn't really a plot point. And, people are in the theater being like, you can't give that person a call or a text. What are you doing? So they've been trying to struggle to figure out how you do like this tiny personal sized screen that's in your face and really make that cinematic. And it's been interesting to see like how they try to like incorporate text next to facial expressions, or like if you look at Chef, how they have like the little tweet and it's literally a bird that flies away, and that's kind of cute, but that doesn't work for everything. And most of the time when I really like it when they show the text as somebody's typing and then they show it changing. Somebody types something and then changes their mind and erases it. And it's nice because it gives you a really visual way of seeing what people really think versus what they actually say. And we didn't really have a lot of ways to do that before, besides just sheer acting talent.
Yeah, and I just wanted to throw out a bad example of this, and that was Yoga Hosers.
Yeah, but I mean, Yoga Hosers is kind of a bad example of a lot of what this movie's trying to do, so...
Yeah, so the movie starts out with Aubrey Plaza, the titular character Ingrid, texting, and there's like a wedding going on.
And she's looking through Instagram and liking pictures of somebody's wedding and crying about it.
Yeah, and at first you're not like really sure what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then she gets out of the car, and then she maces the bride.
Mm-hmm. And she's in, like, sweats anyway. She's crying. She's like, all your favorite people are here, and you didn't invite me, you bitch! And maces her in the face. Which kind of unravels into this whole thing where you discover later that it's not like, oh, it was a best friend who was snubbed, or they had a falling out, or it's like her estranged sister. They literally don't know each other.
Yeah, and it was really funny because, like, at the very beginning of the movie, I was just like, is this just an adaptation of Nosedive from Black Mirror?
A little bit with, like, the instant liking, or not even the instant liking, but the compulsory liking.
Yeah.
Because you see her a lot in the movie where she's just hearting... I don't Instagram. I don't fucking know. But she's just hearting pictures... And sometimes she'll, like, look at it and just be like, I don't even know. But she'll still have to like it before she moves on. It's just a compulsion.
I do think that there's definitely an obsessive-compulsive nature to her, but...
But there's also an obsessive-compulsive nature to social media in general. Like, I've heard people make jokes about, like, when do I find the end of the Facebook timeline? I don't know if I'm going to like what I find, sort of thing, because it's just... invites you to scroll for forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, and I find myself getting trapped, like, where I'll have, like, a conversation with somebody, and then it's like, oh, well, I'm having this debate online and all that kind of stuff, but, like, I got other shit to do. Should I continue, or, like, should I just, like, let it wait? And if I let it wait, people are going to be like, what, you don't have a response, and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, no, I have a fucking life.
Yeah, that's true. Or you get wrapped up, like, looking at other people's arguments, or... You get wrapped up, like, clicking on a bunch of articles or whatever. Going back and forth between different social media platforms, I guess, if you're not, a Luddite like me. You're like a barely Facebook kind of a little bit.
I'm sure the generations after our generation, the generation slightly after our generation, is going to, like, look at us and be like, what the fuck? I'm not sure what the new thing will be then, but I'm sure it will be, like, passing messages a lot quicker so that you can, like, live your life more.
Or something like that, yeah.
Or people will be, like, literally in the grid and, like, not communicating with, like, the outside world.
Right. So the title is called Ingrid Goes West because after that whole incident where she gets a restraining order from the bride of this wedding, she takes her newfound inheritance to pursue her new stalker, her new stalkee, I guess, out in LA. And something I do really like, after I bitched about the living conditions in La La Land, and I will never stop bitching about La La Land, I swear to God, but somebody was like, Well, that's just the way things are in movies. You know, people always have unrealistic lifestyles in movies, and it's like, okay, first of all, that's not even true. There were so many movies last year where people were living in a realistic style. Like, even The Neon Demon is about a prestigious, up-and-coming 17-year-old beautiful model in LA, and she's living in a really shitty motel with a landlord who's a child molester. Like, and that wasn't even like an uncommon thing to see in movies in 2016. I'm just saying, like, when you see it in La La Land, it does kind of stick out because we don't do that in movies anymore. And Ingrid Goes West is another good example where it's like she starts out with all this money, so you kind of have a good reason for why this happens. But a lot of the movie is actually about how, like, different people are trying to, like, live the dream and do what they think society is trying to tell them to do, and it doesn't work out financially. And I don't really want to get too much into spoilers and, like, how this all unfolds, but it's not just Ingrid. A lot of people are like, well, you know, I have this occupation and it's really great, and then you find out, no, it's not, because they're not making money and they're not doing anything. And then they're like, I don't know how, we're just gonna, like, live on this lifestyle. And even with Ingrid Goes West, they establish, like, she has all this money at the beginning, and then you just see how quickly it runs out in LA.
Well, it's also, like, really strange, like, why she decided to take all the money out from the bank at once.
Yeah, that was one thing that was really unrealistic, is I'm pretty sure banks don't let you do that.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the max you can take out is $10,000.
And she took out $60,000. And then some. Yeah. But one of the things I did also really like in the movie is when she moves out to LA, she has a landlord, and the landlord, you know, he vapes, he's talking about, you know, hooking up with some chick on the phone. You know, he doesn't seem like a traditional landlord. You know, he's her age. And he's also ridiculously nerdy. He's into Batman, and by Batman, I mean all the Batmans. Like, he loves Batman Forever, kind of really hardcore nerd. But that's what a millennial nerd really is it's just like the guy who also has a gun and cocaine in his car and will vape in front of you and, like, loves Batman.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting how, like, every generation has a sense of nostalgia for whatever decade was 2 decades ago.
Yeah, it kind of goes in cycles like that. Which I'm glad that, like, I'm not really a big fan of, like, 80s nostalgia or 80s spoofs, but I'm glad that we're getting to a point where we can use neon colors again.
Yeah.
Neon colors are awesome.
Yeah, instead of, like, bleached out colors, which was, like, all in vogue for, like, a while.
Yep. And that'll come back before I'm ready for it, too, I'm sure. But something I did really like about this movie is, you know, a lot of it is about the phoniness of what you see on social media versus what their lives are actually like. But there is a real sense of understanding of these characters. And a lot of times movies are fine enough just having, you know, stereotypes, or especially in this generation, there's a lot of, we don't know how to write for millennials sort of a thing. Even if you are a millennial, you kind of don't know how to write about being a millennial because you're too young.
It's kind of like how TV and movies, like, tried to write for video games, and it's like, how are you that unaware of video games? It's not that crazy to, like, understand the concept of how people play video games.
Right, exactly. So it was really refreshing to see a movie that was really character motivated and was very specifically like a time capsule of right now, but actually worked really well and seemed really genuine.
Yeah, it definitely offers a social commentary that I wasn't expecting, but was really pleasantly surprised at.
Yeah.
And, like, this is coming off the heels of Nosedive. Yes, I keep on saying Nosedive, which there are a lot. Black
Mirror is all about our millennial technological problems. When you have another movie that's sort of about that, it's impossible to not, like, kind of think about it. Especially because one of the guys in the movie is actually from the video game episode. I don't remember what it's called, but it's the game episode of Black Mirror.
It's like Testing.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he was totally the husband in this movie.
Yeah, he was.
So her character essentially becomes obsessed with Elizabeth Olsen, who is an Instagram photographer.
Yeah.
Because that's totally a thing.
That's totally a way to make a living.
It's always amusing when I see careers like that, because it's like, how do you make money when you essentially just hang out all the time?
Yeah, but that's also what the movie was really about, which is what I liked.
No, I'm agreeing with you on that one. It's just like, it is one of those things where...
Have you seen the HGTV memes?
Yes.
It's exactly like that. She's an HGTV meme. Where, like, these memes are, people are like, I'm watching HGTV, one of those shows where they're flipping houses or something. And it's something crazy like, the husband is somebody who, like, makes wood sculpt... No, that's a little too talented. Hang on. He's somebody who, like, paints wood chips or something like... No. I don't know. I can't think of a good one. One of them is, like, the woman makes, like, bubble... Or, like, she makes chewed gum art or something like that. It's always, like, these really bullshit titles of things that have, like, no purpose in the world. I think the guy's description was, like, the husband is a professional at making semen knots for display cases. Something like that. And it's like, their asking price for a new house is $250,000. I'm not explaining it very well, but it's kind of like that, where it's like, I'm an Instagram photographer, and my husband is a pop artist, And I won't spoil what their definition of that is, but it was pretty hysterical.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy how, like, these type of people can make a living. And quite frankly, just to step outside of, like, what we're talking about for just a brief second, it's essentially why I think YouTube got rid of a lot of advertisements for, like, up-and-comers on, like, YouTube, because, like, some rich assholes were like, whoa, you mean I could essentially just film something in my house and get millions of followers and make a whole bunch of money? We got to stop that shit from happening. You got to go through avenues to do that. I think that's part of the, like, adpocalypse and stuff like that with YouTube.
I mean, not to get too far on this tangent, but I do think most of that stems more from television media being upset that they're being outdone by YouTube.
Yeah, those type of people are getting mad at people that, aren't going through the channels that they had to go to get their careers. Like, people are jumping over that. And, with any new medium that comes out, there's always going to be some backlash with the old.
Right.
I mean, look, yeah, television is trying to fight the internet, and it's losing pretty badly. So, Ingrid is a really creepy character, and I like the audacity that the film has to, like, really present her as sympathetic, but doesn't shy away from some of her odder tendencies.
To put it mildly.
Yeah, and it's something strange. I know I talked to you about this, like, right after we saw the movie, but, like, I don't usually see movies where females are creeps, like, outside of, like, the single white female kind of thing.
Yeah, I get what you mean, because even if, like, a woman is behaving in a way that's creepy, they always try to sort of, like, play it like it makes sense, or play it as a joke.
Either that, or the men are somehow placed as more awful than the women in those situations.
This is like, also because you've never seen a lot of How I Met Your Mother. They do a lot to make women creepy on that show.
Okay.
I'm just saying. There's an episode where Allison Hannigan is chasing after Jason Segel, like Jason Segel's potential new girlfriend, and she's pretending to be a hunchback stalker. And it, like, really terrifies the new girlfriend, and Marshall starts thinking, like, the new girlfriend is legitimately insane because Lily's been, like, stalking her and freaking her out. So overall, I really like this movie. I would really recommend it. It's hard to sell the premise without giving away a lot of the humor and the reveals of it, but there's a lot there. I just think that Dan Pinto is literally the best. I kind of love him like a teddy bear. Like, he's awesome. And the sex scene in this movie doesn't like compare to the bronze or anything, but it's a lot of fun. I appreciate fun sex scenes.
All right. So if you watch The Big Bang Theory, you have to watch The Bronze. If you don't watch The Big Bang Theory,
you still have to watch The Bronze.
Because I don't watch The Big Bang Theory. It's not my cup of tea. I get it, people like it, but
well, it was really funny when I had already seen The Bronze and I showed it to you, and I already knew from watching Big Bang Theory that she's kind of like, to put it again in How I Met Your Mother terms, she's like half boob because she's short but really big boobs. And then in The Bronze, they like try to hide it for a while, and I was just kind of like waiting for you to realize that she was like ridiculously hot. Because it is kind of a reveal in the movie.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was about to say, like, spoiler alert.
It's not that much of a spoiler if you've, like, ever seen a picture of her anywhere. There's a picture of her from a photo shoot that she did where she's in, like, skin-tight leather with a whip, like, posing as a dominatrix, and it has nothing to do with anything. I mean, her sex appeal is not exactly, like, a big kept secret in Hollywood. I mean, Jesus Christ. But the Bronze does have seriously one of the best funny sex scenes ever, like for real. And Ingrid's Goes West isn't quite there, but it's still a lot of fun.
Though I gotta say, nothing that I've seen lately can top. This isn't a sex scene, but it's definitely talking about sex. The scene in Girls Trip.
Girls Trip is just hysterical though. I recently, just today, I saw the movie Snatched is being released on DVD. And Snatched is boring, you guys. Like, don't bother. But the tagline says, funniest movie this year. And I'm like, oh, wow. You're calling yourself the funniest movie of the year the same year as Girls Trip. Shut the fuck up, dude. No.
Yeah, and for all you people that might think that, like, oh, Girls Trip, it's just like, you know, Bridesmaids or, you know, like a Tyler Perry movie. I would seriously say go watch the movie. Like, it totally isn't what you would expect it to be.
Yeah, and the best thing is all the jokes from the trailers are only the first half of the joke. So even when you're like, oh, well, I already saw this scene, you didn't see the scene. You didn't see the best part of anything.
Yeah. And a lot of the best jokes in the movie were unable to be in the trailer.
For very good reason. But, oh my god. Anyway, so moving on to our unpopular opinion, I guarantee.
Yeah, which is kind of weird. Like, this has kind of been the crazy year for that. I mean, last year was kind of that way, too. In fact, the past couple years...
that's just always going to be the case, is different people have different opinions.
Yeah, so our unpopular opinion of Wind River...
is that it's bullshit.
But it's kind of interesting because this movie actually starts out really strong.
For the first 2/3 of the movie, I really, really liked it. I thought it might end up being one of the best movies of the year. And again, to not have spoilers, the last third ruins everything in the entire movie, before and after. But to talk about the good points first, because I do want to point out the good parts, it's really interesting to see a movie where men are vulnerable. Not a man, but men in general all throughout the movie are really vulnerable. And I will give this writer who worked on Sicario and Hell or High Water, which Hell or High Water I really loved. He does a really good job at writing men. He does a really good job of writing rural life in a respectable way. Not in a rednecks, ha. Probably because I'm sure he grew up in like a similar environment. He kind of writes like he has. But it's nice to see that in movies. I kind of get like, it's refreshing to me when I can see a movie where it's like, yeah, that's what, you know, I recognize that from my life. And it's nice to not see it be played like a fucking joke. And a lot of the artistic qualities to the movie are really great. And the cinematography is really awesome. And I love the colors. And I love a lot of the editing is really, really on point. And a lot of people did a really, really good job making this movie. And that's all I can say because I can't talk anything about why the movie is ruined until you've actually seen the movie. Except for to say that this is yet another example of blatant victimization of Native American women.
No.
For not any particularly good reason, besides just shock value. And I hate to say shock value like it's a derogatory term, because I think shock value has a lot of worth in film. You know, you can look at Serbian film and say, oh, well, it's just shock value. You know, Clockwork Orange, it's just shock value. But the shock value is to a point where if you took the shock value away, you wouldn't really have a movie anymore. You know, if you have a movie that's talking about to what extent are we really willing to exercise free will for everybody, you can't do it unless you take it to its extremes. Like in Clockwork Orange, you know, in Irreversible, when you have, you know, the infamous rape scene from that, it's shock value, but it's also really having you experience what it is about rape that makes it so abhorrent and unacceptable. You know, there's a purpose to it. But in Wind River, I'm not saying there's no purpose to it, because there's a very clear one. It's just very poorly done, and I think not done with enough thought. And I'm gonna say, as much as this writer is really good at writing men, he needs to stop writing women. Just stop. You know, after Sicario and this movie, just stop writing women altogether. Don't even bother. Just do more stuff like Hell or High Water, where it's just about dudes. That's fine, but like, you can't write women as equal human beings to men, clearly. And that drives me fucking crazy. Because again, without getting into spoilers, even though you have men in this movie before the final third, in the first 2/3, even if you have men in this movie who are dealing with grief, who are drug dealers, who are, you know, scum of the earth, you write them as three-dimensional characters. They're fully developed. You have a lot of stuff about choice. You have a lot of stuff about emotion and feeling. Whereas in this movie, every woman doesn't have agency, and every woman is victimized because they can't do anything else. The most, quote-unquote, liberated woman is essentially just a stone-cold bitch for no good reason, and is also in only 2 scenes of the movie and has barely any lines or screen time. So,
do you want to get into spoilers?
Let's get into spoilers.
Yeah, because essentially we're going to be very vague if we don't talk about spoilers. So, like, in this certain case, yeah, we have to talk about spoilers.
We have to talk about what wrecks the movie. You can't talk about it in vague terms. You have to be very upfront with it.
All right, so full spoiler alert starting now.
Okay, so here's the problem. The reason why everybody loves this movie... Okay, no. When we came out of the theater, everybody was loving this movie. And the reason why is because it's a rape revenge film. And it's awesome to see the rapist get what's coming to him. And we can all feel good that the victimized woman has been vindicated. The problem is like the whole movie is set up to be this teenage girl has been raped and murdered. And they're trying to figure out, you know, who's behind it. And they're trying to figure out what the situation is. You know, it's murder mystery, whatever. But the problem is the movie is going along at its pace. It's from the perspective of a hunter who has been sort of unwillingly paired up with a female FBI agent. And they're trying to unfold this mystery, but it's always from their perspective. And while that's kind of happening, except for a couple things, it's going pretty good. Those couple things are the mother of the victim is found cutting herself, and nothing's done to help her at all. She's literally just cutting herself in the scene to prove a point to the other woman, like, oh, you should have known. See, we told you. Because the father...
Even though, like, in a real situation, like, I don't see, especially women to women, I don't see a woman, especially a woman of authority, like an FBI agent, closing the fucking door when a woman's slitting her fucking wrist.
Well, the husband did, and the police chief did, and then the FBI agent did. They're all aware of what's happening, and they're like, well, see, she's a grown woman and can make her own decisions.
But you think somebody separated from that would basically be like, what the fuck, guys?
Well, legally speaking, that should press your no. Call 911 now. We need to get her to a mental institution where she is going to be watched 24 hours a day to make sure she doesn't kill herself.
Or, like, even though I know this whole story is, like, pressing with time and all that kind of stuff, but that seems like a situation, you know, with the weather and all that kind of stuff, that seems like a situation where you'd be like, okay, well, we have to wait until services come before we can move forward.
Well, that's completely understandable, but they all did fucking nothing.
Exactly.
They literally just had this woman abusing herself for the sake of making the victim's father's point of, oh, well, a grown woman can do whatever she wants. It's bullshit, is what I'm saying. Yeah. So after that, you also had, like, once you're starting to introduce, like, the bad guys, quote unquote. And I give the movie credit for knowing that the audience can piece together what's going on. They know that the woman's been raped either multiple times or by multiple people. They understand that we're getting close to the people who actually did it. They understand that, like, oh, these guys are being, you know, they're being sneaky and they're lying. They must have had something to do with it. But the narrative switches for a whole scene. All of a sudden, it's not from the protagonist's perspective anymore. It's a cutaway to, like, what really happened the night that she was raped and murdered. And in that scene, she shows up to see her boyfriend, and they're both really happy, and they have a great relationship, and great character judgment, and they have sex, and it's fine. And then all of the guys who are working with the boyfriend come home. One of the guys is really drunk, starts harassing the woman. The boyfriend is a perfect boyfriend, beats him up and kicks him out because nobody else will do it. And then the drunk guy comes back in, starts harassing her again. All of a sudden, all these people who were bystanding and, like, letting him behave this way are all getting in, beating up the boyfriend, beating up the girl. The girl is fighting back, but she's unconscious. And when she's unconscious, she gets raped by the guy, the drunk guy. They all say they're going to take turns with her. The boyfriend's been beaten up, indisposed, murdered. It's not important, obviously. As far as the movie's concerned, the boyfriend is just not important. But
even
she
gets
to
kind of filmed from his perspective.
Yeah, but the rape scene is really brutal, and it's hard to sit through, and it's uncomfortable, and I give it credit for that. But she fights him off, and she goes out the door, and from there she ran 6 miles in the snow, abused and cold and alone, and she died out in the wilderness like a fighter. We're supposed to feel good about that.
Why should we feel good about a woman who's able to go a distance that fucking means nothing?
In below 20-degree temperature.
Yeah, exactly.
They spend a lot of movie building up the fact that, like, physically it's really hard and most people can't actually do that. It's fine.
I get that, but, like, it's so fucking stupid. Like, why is this something to be championed? Like, in any way.
Well, because they're trying to be like, no, but she was so brave, whatever. And then that's it. That's the whole scene. The problem with this scene, for a lot of reasons, first of all, it establishes that a lot of the facts that we know about the case are not true, which gives me severe The Revenant flashbacks, where you had Powakwa's rape arc, literally for the sake of having a Native American woman be raped and then be vindicated, even though you didn't bother to make her plot make any fucking sense.
Yeah, and I cut some of the stuff because, like, we went on for, like, 10 minutes about that, and I did cut some of the stuff that you were talking about Powakwa, but, like, it
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
They didn't bother to have it make sense because they didn't really care. They just wanted to show that, and that's what this movie feels like, too. But the problem with this scene, besides that, is the fact that this is the grandfather in Princess Bride stopping the story for a minute to reassure his son that nothing bad's gonna happen. There's a scene in Princess Bride where, he's talking about the action is getting really intense, the eel is starting to charge her, but, hey,
the
son...
flesh-eating eels,
yeah, those are the shrieking eels, yeah. But she doesn't get eaten by the eels, and the son's like, what? And he's like, I'm just explaining this to you because you seem nervous. And he's like, well, I'm concerned. It's not the same thing. I can handle it like an adult. The whole point of having this scene in the movie is to reassure the audience that all the action that happens after this point is totally okay because the good guys are doing the right thing and the bad guys are all totally evil, you guys. Because as much as a lot of the men have been written like well-developed characters to this point, all of a sudden the villains are sort of shoehorned in. It's nobody you knew before. There's no development. They're just shitty assholes. So you can feel okay about the fact that they're getting murdered and tortured. And the problem with this scene, too, is that if you didn't have this scene from a different perspective shoved in the movie at this exact point, nothing else in the movie makes sense. Because nobody in the movie knows that that's what happened. But we all know that that's what happened, so it's okay. We all know that, no, it's totally okay that the good guys are doing this because we all know that they're bad guys. But they don't know that. They don't have proof. They don't have evidence. They don't even have a decent hypothesis. They just go. And the whole idea of the hunter, Jeremy Renner's character, going ahead and torturing this dude to death when really the only thing he did was shoot the FBI agent. That's all he knows that he did. And you can say, well, that makes him guilty, but I mean, they were all, they all acted the same way. He doesn't know shit. And he's just acting, oh, you definitely did it. And I know he got him to confess and all this stuff, but it really only exists to say the good guys are good and the bad guys are bad. And it's bullshit.
Yeah, so getting on to this rape scene, because I did want to bring up this point. It doesn't match the description that the coroner said, and I get it, coroners can be wrong and all that kind of stuff, but like they specifically said, yeah, but they specifically said that she was raped multiple times. Clearly, in the movie, she was only raped once, and we see that.
Well, and the other thing, too, is the coroner said the reason why she was either raped by multiple people or by the same man multiple times is because she had different degrees of tearing in her vagina. Which you can totally say, like, if you can put it on public television at 3 p.m., I'm sure it's fine for me to say on YouTube. But
this video will be non-advertiser friendly because that word popped up and
yeah, even though Law & Order SVU does just fine.
Yeah.
But in the very graphic scene, we can see that there is no way for that to be possible. Which shows a disregard for character and a disregard for story. He victimized her for the sake of doing that. And it sucks. And it's the same way they victimized every woman in the movie. They didn't have any of the women have actual character. They didn't let any of the women make their own choices as much as, you know, the father gets on a pedestal and is like, well, yeah, I didn't know who her boyfriend was and I didn't know where she was going, but she was 18. She can make her own choices. But the movie doesn't let women make their own choices at any given point.
Women or Native American women?
Native American women, but, like, let's be honest, Elizabeth Olsen and Emily Blunt are essentially the same person. You know, they're like, oh, she's badass, she's in the FBI, she's gotta be awesome, but then she just kind of fails at everything all the time. Like, they're literally the same character in two different locations. You know, hot blonde chick who, like, clearly shouldn't be there, and it's stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, and the other thing, too, that didn't really work in this movie is Jeremy Renner's daughter also went missing and was killed under mysterious circumstances. But they set the circumstances up, both him and the victim in this movie, his daughter and the victim in this movie, they're best friends. And they also died under almost the exact same circumstances, to the point where you're kind of like, it has to be the same perpetrator. But it's totally not. No. It's totally not. Oh, well, they sort of tie in together thematically, right? Because he talked about in this really emotional scene, like, he's never going to know what happened to his daughter. But no, they not really, because they totally know what happens to the other girl, and nope, it's totally fine. There was no real connection there. There was no real reason to have his daughter be murdered like that, except for to give him more character, which he didn't need more character. We already had, like, a lot of good stuff with him. You know, he's really good at his job, and we get a lot of establishing of that. He's a divorcee who's decent to his ex-wife, wants what's best for her, and isn't a deadbeat dad to his son. and has a lot of really good heartwarming scenes with the kid, that's all you need. You didn't need to throw in that, oh yeah, he also had a Native American daughter who was totally brutalized and murdered. You didn't need that. It didn't tie into anything. It's just, you victimized another woman in your movie. Great. Good for you. And I don't like saying that because I think that there are a lot of movies where you show brutality towards women in an effective way for a good purpose. Like, I think Irreversible is a phenomenal movie in that regard because you have a real person undergoing something traumatic and you're taking it apart to let moviegoers understand what they're going through. And in this movie, these women aren't people. They don't get to do anything. They're just brutalized and thrown aside for the sake of the better defined male character story arc. And it's bullshit.
I wanted to get on a little bit about the rapist, too, because I think the rapist is also a problem.
The rapist is totally a problem.
And the reason why I want to say this is because we have this thing in our media, and, like, I understand the compulsion to do this. You never want to portray a rapist as a sympathetic person. I get that.
Unless he's a pedophile, then it's okay.
Like in what?
Well, in the first Lolita movie, they were fine with letting him be boring.
Well,
in the
I'm
second
talking
Lolita
about
movie,
recently.
He's a human being, and then you had American Beauty, which was also a similar thing.
No, American Beauty, he didn't do anything.
He didn't do anything, but there's... Oh, Happiness, he didn't do anything either, but that's also, like, a sympathetic pedophile.
But that's also fucking Todd Solondz. Like,
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, yeah, Todd Solondz is not really, like, a good comparison, like, when I'm trying to say this. Because Todd Solondz makes every single one of these people sympathetic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, no. But I'm talking about, like, mainstream stuff. Like, mainstream stuff, like, they view all rapists as, like, a Brock Turner type. Or, you know, somebody who is almost always drunk, almost always, you know, like, laser focused, and, like, his purpose at the very beginning of the scene is rape. What I think's unfortunate about this, to be completely unadvertiser friendly, is the fact that this oftentimes tends to be the only way that we see rape portrayed in media.
And the problem with that is that you're making the definition of rape too narrow for real people to employ that idea. I think Felicity actually puts it best. And that's an old-ass TV show from the 90s. But there's a couple of episodes where there's a character in it who is raped by her boyfriend. But she's trying to rationalize it like, well, it's not rape, right? I mean, he wasn't mean to me. He didn't, like, push me down. He wasn't violent. He didn't hit me. You know, it's, to sort of paraphrase, it's not like in the movies or on TV where he's an evil person and he wanted to rape me, but it was still rape. And I give Felicity a lot of props for really getting into the different shades of gray when it comes to what rape and non-consent really means. But then in a lot of current media, we are having this backlash to, we need to tell people rape is bad, like people don't know that rape is bad.
Yeah.
So let's just have the bad guys all want to rape on purpose all the time, and that's their whole existence. So then they're not real people, and we don't have to think about it. We can point at them and be like, clearly that's bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is the unfortunate, uncomfortable conversation that nobody is having right now. That, yes, rapists are people. They are awful people. They do awful things. Mm-hmm. And by that makes them an awful person.
Yeah, I mean,
there's also a person there, which gets into a lot of nuance and uncomfortable territories that people do not want to go in. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people watch A Clockwork Orange now and are uncomfortable with it. because, yeah, essentially that movie has fun rape in it, which you could never
with very
have.
liberal air quotes there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, that's exactly the problem with this, especially because this is a movie made for adults. Very obviously. And
this isn't an after-school special.
Right. Where they're trying to explain what rape is, you know. And you're right, the problem with that is that when you see situations like this, you get into this headspace of like, well, I don't know people who are like that. That doesn't sound like anyone I know. This would never happen to me or to anyone I know because people, like, I don't know people who behave that way.
Yeah, and even rapists, like, will see this type of media, and then when people are like, oh, well, you raped this person, they're like, no, I didn't rape this person. Because that's what rape is. Like, what I did, yeah, it was kind of messed up, but, like, seriously, there's a video that I saw, like, TYT or something like that, where this guy was describing a rape that he had committed, but, like, in his mind, he did not see it that way. And what's fucked up is, like, we actually need to spell this out for people, that there are other types of rape that exist.
Yeah, I agree. And we're probably contradicting ourselves a little bit when we say, like, we don't like that this movie is spelling it out, but we do need to spell it out. But we need to stop conforming to this extraordinarily narrow, unrealistic sense of what rape is.
Well, yeah,
if you're going to talk about rape in any
about
serious way.
That's my frustration about it, is because, like, I've seen this before. There's nothing shocking about this anymore.
Dude, when I was actually watching the scene, I mean, like, it's really hard for me to watch content like that, and it should be. You know, the scene itself is well filmed and well put together. I'm not really complaining about the way they filmed the scene. My problem is the way that fits into the narrative.
But it's really also stupid how it's, like, set up, because, like, okay, given the context of the film, you have a guy who's drunk and belligerent, and granted the other guys are a little tipsy, but in most situations, unless you set up that is, like, their boy or, like, something like that, which the movie doesn't really set up, I can't see that realistically playing out that way.
It plays out like that all the time, though. You have people who, like, get together and gang rape people. You have people who do that in public, and nobody does anything about it. I mean, do I really have to spell out Steubenville? Although in that case, they were all children.
Yes, in that case, they were all they were all in on it, and
children.
Yeah, but, like, in those cases, like, everybody's in on it. Like,
well, and that's what the situation was, where everyone was in on it.
I guess they were just, like, waiting their turn or something like that.
Yeah, because they were all gathered around. They're like, we're all gonna have a turn with her, which didn't happen.
Yeah, I guess the fact that didn't happen, and the fact that, like, the thing, I'm sorry.
A big problem, too, is that, like, in The Revenant, most of the reason why I also really hate that that's even included is because it has nothing to do with anything in the movie, and you didn't need it for any fucking reason. But in this is what the entire fucking movie is about. Yeah. And you fucked it up that bad by having somebody who wasn't allowed to be a person in the context of the movie, who didn't have any other character besides, well, she's a fighter because she was raped and ran 6 miles in the snow. And even after they solve the case, even the Elizabeth Olsen remembers her for running 6 miles in the snow. That's fucked up. And then on top of that, you just had it be like this black and white bullshit case of evil rapist wanted to rape her and then raped her sort of garbage scenario. And the problem is that this does have a real impact on people. You know, there are studies about, like, video games don't contribute violent or sexist tendencies in people. But it's really hard to say that about, you know, TV when it comes to something like rape, because it's something that clearly a lot of people aren't getting properly educated on. You know, so many people in America aren't being properly educated on sex, they're not being properly educated on consent, they're not being properly educated on rape and what you do in that sort of situation. And then you have scenes like, you have so many different forms of media, including this movie, that's just adding on to it, that's just giving a really uninformative take on it.
Yeah, and it's one of the things where, like, I'm not going to say, like, they shouldn't do what they're doing because, like, I personally think that, censorship shouldn't happen. But, I do think that there's a level of tact. And what I'm saying is, like, the way that I saw the film and how it portrayed things, it lacked tact.
It lacked tact and it lacked understanding. A lot. And then at the end of the movie, they throw up this bullshit line of, like, there's no demographic for how many Native American women go missing every year. Feel bad now, you guys. As if, that had anything to do with the movie.
Yeah, and it's also, like, one of those things where it's, like, that would have had, like, a bigger impact if you made the Native American woman, like, the main character of the movie. And then, like...
And, like, nobody knew she was missing and she didn't know how to get back to people or something like that.
Yeah, like, you made her more of a character and all that kind of stuff. And I get you want to do, like, a mystery and, like, a reveal and all that kind of stuff. But I think that, like, the format... Yeah, I think the format of the film, is also detrimental to, like, how everything, like, works.
Yeah, but, like, part of the reason why I bring up, like, the informative aspect of, like, the rape scenes is because when you throw a bullshit tagline like that at the end, you're saying that you want people to be informed by your movie. You're trying to let people walk out of the movie with some new facts and something they didn't really think about before, didn't know before.
Yeah, but, like, when you're, like, pumping your fists and going, like, fuck yeah, which is essentially what our audience did.
Yeah, that's what pretty much everybody did.
It kind of loses that meaning. Like if people, get their catharsis before they leave the theater, then, like, what are they supposed to take when they walk out? Nothing.
And that's not even a problem with, like, the rape revenge genre, because there are so many rape revenge films that have a very similar sort of, like, fuck yeah, kill the rapist sort of a vibe to it, because you established the subject is the woman who is victimized, and then she does not become the victim anymore. In this movie, there's no way for her to not be the victim.
Right.
She's always the victim. She's the victim of the murder. She's the victim of the rape. She's the subject of an investigation because she's been victimized. She's not alive to, like, give her take on it or anything like that. She has her body splayed open for the whole world to fucking see, and that's it.
And for any of you who are not familiar with this genre, I would say if you've seen Kill Bill, just think of the Buck plotline, and that's pretty much how, like, rape revenge movies play out. So, yeah, I was really bummed out, especially because, like, like, earlier in the film, like, that conversation with, like, one of the drug addicts that he was having.
That was,
like,
a perfect example of what I was trying to talk about. Like, there's a scene, and you said it was one of the best scenes of the movie, and I really have to agree, where Jeremy Renner is in a police car with this guy who's a drug dealer, and he's talking to him like, don't you feel terrible? You're making all these choices. You could have done anything with your life. You could have, and by anything, he spells out, he's like, military, you could have done labor. It's not really an extensive list of, like, anything he could have done, but, he's like, you chose to do this. You chose to be this. But there's nothing like that for any of the women in this movie. The closest is his ex-wife has a job in another city. But she is, like, really bitchy to him for no discernible reason, because he is, like, really fine to her. And she's also gets almost no lines and almost no screen time.
I mean, I can kind of understand that because, yeah, divorces can sometimes be, like, bitter.
Yeah, but, like, when your ex-husband is standing there saying, no, this is a really great opportunity for you. You know what? You do your best to do this, and on my end, I will figure it out, and we will figure out how to work this out together. Why are you still being a bitch? Like...
Well, it might have been the writer trying to take some stabs at something in his personal life.
Well, like I said, I don't think this writer understands how to write women as equal human beings to everybody else.
And I've seen that before. I've seen people just unable to write women. I've also seen the other way around, where some women are unable to write men. Like, they either, only write men as sort of this, like, monstrous thing, or they just don't get it.
Well, yeah, and you're exactly right. This is not something unique to this writer, but after seeing 3 of his movies, that's just my conclusion.
Yeah, and this is the first movie he's directed.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would say, first of all, well, there were actually some really compelling scenes with great cinematography. There was a conversation that was had where it was talking about his daughter and all that kind of stuff. And quite frankly, I lost half of that conversation because I was so goddamn distracted by the pure amateurness of the camera movement in that scene.
Yeah, I was really distracted by it too. I mean, it wasn't Detroit levels of bad, but it was...
I mean, Detroit
it was not
is
appropriate
kind of
for
done
the
to
scene.
Detroit is... Catherine Bigelow tried to repeat the same style that she's done in her past two movies, but like when you set it in the 60s, like how the fuck is that supposed to work? Because they don't
Well, not only that, but like you're making your movie difficult to watch for the wrong reason.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we both watched Hardcore Henry and didn't have any problem with motion sickness with that one. And I've been on antibiotics, which make me nauseous, and I thought that's the reason why I was having a really hard time watching the movie. And he told me, like, nope, I'm getting so motion sick. Like, yeah. I legitimately was like, dude, we might have to leave. We can't actually physically watch this movie.
Yeah, it's crazy because, like, dude, I watched, like, tons of movies that have, like, crazy motion, you know. Like, I don't have the problem with action movies that a lot of people have where they're like, oh, I can't tell what's going on and all this kind of stuff. Like, I can usually read scenes pretty well. It's just, like, this shaky cam, zoom in, zoom out kind of thing.
And like 100% of the time, even when it's not needed.
Yeah.
You know, they're walking down the hallway towards the pool, or they're chilling by the pool and just having a pleasant conversation. Why are you shooting it like you were shooting a war scene in Hurt Locker?
Yeah.
Like, are you serious right now?
In this movie, it's just a conversation.
It's as inappropriate. You don't need a steady cam shot when Jeremy Renner is having like this big emotional moment where all he's doing is standing there delivering a performance.
Yeah, and if you were going to use that, it would make more sense if like there was some tension going on, like people were yelling or something like that. That kind of creates a dynamic where that sort of camera movement would make sense. You know, that...
Let me put it to you like this. What was the camera movement like when Woody Harrelson had his monologue in War for the Planet of the Apes?
It was still,
and it was all focused on his performance. So we as the viewers could just focus on nothing else but what he was saying and how he was saying it. Yeah. And that's what that scene needed to be.
Well, and that was also a scene that focused on close-ups and stuff. And when you're doing a conversation, especially when people are getting intimate and, you know, talking about stuff that's very personal to them, first of all, it is a director's choice to take the camera and move it back. But if you're going to do that, you need to like emphasize the space, or something has to be done so that you justify not focusing on the actor.
But in that situation, there was nothing else to focus on besides the shitty camera work. I mean, it was the most amateur camera work choice I had seen literally since the movie Burlesque.
Yeah, and it's really...
And that's a mean thing to say for anyone who hasn't seen the movie. I don't watch it, but like, if you've seen it, like, you know how mean it is to say something like that.
And like, I will say that I am no filmmaker right now. I've made a couple films, but like I would consider myself amateur. But I would and I don't consider myself an angry person in most circumstances, you know, when it comes to filming scenes. But if I had seen that, I probably would have yelled at somebody.
Yeah, especially because the performance that Jeremy Renner gave was phenomenal.
And...
I was able to focus on it a little bit more than you. Maybe you couldn't really get into it, but like, it was really fantastic.
It was good, but I was so distracted.
But that's not Jeremy Renner's fault.
Like... No, it isn't. And it's possible that was the best take, you know, and then they just decided to use the best take and all that kind of stuff.
That's probably true, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why, me personally, I've had many arguments with
It really felt
people.
like unfortunately, having been on enough film sets to have seen things like this happen, it legitimately felt like they arrived on set that day and didn't have the right equipment and decided to make the best with what they could without a tripod or dolly or a track.
Yeah, then shoot the scene like a couple times.
Well, even if they did shoot it a couple times, who's to say, like, that might have been the best camera work they were able to get out of, like, a handheld camera like that.
I could see the editor, like, sitting down and just being like, motherfuckers.
That's what I was reading in that scene. I was like, oh god, the editor just probably wanted to kill the DP so bad.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't be playing out the situation of, like, what it was like when Jeremy Renner's standing there, pouring his heart out in this scene, and we're thinking about, oh god, the DP just must not have shown up without his tripod that day.
And it's crazy because, like, so many of the shots are very well composed in this movie, you know, are
which
like
is why,
on par with any Hollywood film that's out right now.
Yeah, which is exactly why I swear to you they didn't show up with the right equipment that day. I swear that's what must have happened because nothing else in the movie was shot that way. It doesn't make any logical sense to do it that way unless you literally just didn't have another choice.
Yeah, and I can't even see the argument for, stylistically, no.
No, because it doesn't fit stylistically with literally any other element of the movie.
Yeah, it's also like they shot the film at like a higher frame rate on that. Like, it seems like somebody fucked up, like, in multiple ways.
Or it could be a case where maybe the DP wasn't there that day, you know? People get sick.
Or maybe
stand-ins.
Or maybe the DP was looking over the shoulder of the cinematographer and thought everything looked cool, but the cinematographer, like, didn't put in... not the cinematographer, but the cameraman.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the DP is communicating with the cameraman and everything like that. And I get if you're, like, looking over somebody's shoulder and then you're like, oh, well, it looks good. You can't see, like, the shakiness and all that kind of stuff.
No, in the day of instant playback, that's bullshit.
I was trying to be fair.
I know you were trying to be fair, but, like, any production nowadays has instant playback.
Yeah.
You know, you're not in a situation where you're filming blind anymore.
A lot of movies like The Raid 2 and Baby Driver, they edited literally on set.
Yeah. That's how fast you can turn things around now. And I know so many directors and DPs who won't wrap a scene until they've seen all the instant playback and they know all the footage they have. Which isn't smart. Which is why I don't see that as a possibility in this sort of situation.
Yeah, I will say, like, as an editor, like, sometimes, like, watching the dailies and stuff like that, it gets a little excruciating sometimes, you know, especially, like, if you have a lot of footage.
But you gotta do it or else you come out with shit like that.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I think we're gonna get a lot of comments being like, why did you go on and on and on about fucking camera work? Nobody cares.
Yeah, well, you know, here's the thing. This channel is called All Walks of Film. I know that we've mainly focused on reviews and culture, but I think that we should get into some other aspects of film so that our channel really does incorporate this idea of talking about all different aspects of film.
Yeah. And hey, at least we kept it all about film, you know, and the films we were talking about for the most part.
Yeah, not to give myself a pat on the back or you, but I've heard a lot of podcasts where they don't even talk about film for like the first hour.
Yeah.
You know, I get that we're on YouTube and like a lot of things that we put out, maybe not
too long,
too
much detail, nobody cares, but whatever.
Yeah, what I will say is I would love to put this stuff out on a different platform. However, other platforms cost money. YouTube's free.
Yeah.
I unfortunately had to cancel my subscription to Podbean just because I was spending a lot of time editing and, you know, quite frankly, I wasn't getting any profits in return, not enough to like simply just pay back the Podbean stuff. So I just was like, I figured if people like listening to this, then cool. If not, you know, it will just be a hobby for me. So that's what it is. So if you like this podcast, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like us to talk about more films in this format, let us know. If you'd like us to do a different format or if there's a topic you want us to talk about, let us know. Thanks for listening.